the universe feels was missing. It's not necessarily going to give you what you thought you needed. I'm Heather Grzych, and this is the Wisdom of the Body podcast. This podcast explores the idea of body intelligence as the real key to learning the knowledge of life, or what we call Ayurveda in the ancient language of Sanskrit. We do that by connecting with today's creative leaders and experts who will help you listen to your body, trust your gut, and live in deeper harmony with nature. Come join me as we unlock the golden door to clear, direct perception and become very deep listeners. You can find the Wisdom of the Body podcast on Apple, Spotify, and Stitcher. You can also follow us by joining my email at heathergrzych.com or on Instagram at heathergrzych. I know you're going to love this podcast, so take a second right now to subscribe. Welcome to today's talk on the single most important thing that you must know when you're giving something up. Because I know a lot of people have a hard time giving things up, including me. We all, have certain things in our lives that we feel attached to. We all have certain types of attachment issues. I know there's, a whole thing in psychology about people having different attachment styles, but I think you can have different attachment styles with different things, right? With people, with objects, because you have different relationships with all of these things, different histories, different programming. Some people give things up really easy. It comes super easy to them, who you are, you try something once, and then you just sort of move on to the next thing. Okay, so maybe for someone like that, giving things up is really easy because you just kind of don't hang around much anyway to develop relationships with things, people, objects, things like that. But when you think about giving things up, for those people who giving things up is beneficial for, because it isn't necessarily for everyone in all cases, there's this feeling that we all get when we think about giving things up. And sometimes that can be excitement, and sometimes that can be scary, like a little scary feeling. It could be a mix of different things. It could even feel calming, actually, for some people to think of giving something up. Because if you're giving up something that, say, is giving you anxiety, then that could have a really calming effect on you. But I want to tell you about some really weird data that I saw today that I'm not surprised by, but it just felt really, just smacked me in the face a little bit today. The Commonwealth Fund did a report, and they found that the US has the highest infant and maternal mortality rates, the highest percentage of people with multiple chronic conditions, and lowest life expectancy at birth than any other high-income country, despite spending the most on healthcare. Okay, so we spend more money on healthcare in the United States, and we have the highest death rates from treatable and preventable conditions. The highest percentage of people living with multiple chronic conditions. And our babies and moms pass more than other countries that spend what we spend. I've heard these statistics before, but to see them all together like that really hit me, that we could be putting so many resources into things and yet not getting better results. It's very strange. Why is that happening? We have all gotten very habitually reliant on things that are no longer good for us at different times of our lives. And when we consciously let go of something, we actually develop a superpower. Sometimes we start to become dependent on things that are actually bad for us. And when we stop the dependence on something, there's a real magical shift that takes place inside us, which then affects the outer layers of our life, the outer layers of our world, because we don't actually realize how much we are blocking ourselves from the very things that we want. This isn't just woo-woo stuff. This is physical. Because literally you have channels in your body. Your body is just a collection of different channels, like from your pores to your digestive tract your arteries and your veins, everything, you're just this bundle of channels, your nerves, neurons, all of these things. We're just bundles of channels. And when also like on cells, we have receptors on our cells. So, when something is blocked within you, which happens a lot to humans because we get things like plaques in our bodies, those things affect our consciousness. The physical body affects your consciousness, and your consciousness also affects your physical body. So if you really, really, really focus on, say, the cleansing of a body, which clearly with all those kinds of preventable and treatable diseases, a lot of times that is from toxicity in our bodies that we have, it's a combination of things that we've done to ourselves and things that the environment is kind of doing to us. It's always both. And when we change our bodies, we actually change our minds. When we change our minds, we change our bodies. It happens. So when you give something up, you open up a space. So you take that thing and it's far away from you. So spatially, you can develop a new relationship with something else that may be more beneficial for you. Okay. But also that when you do this in a body, when you open up a space, when you cleanse the body out, there may have been things that have been blocking sharing of information at a cellular level that now, once these areas feel up for it, because they're probably damaged, they can start to talk to each other. They can start to communicate again. The intelligence of the body can actually come back. And so when you open up a space in the right body, in the right life, something else can fill it. And then we have surprises. We have magic. We have stuff we didn't expect that we weren't experiencing before. And I just think that's so amazing. That's why I love giving things up. And you have to be smart about the things that you give up, okay? But you discover these powers that you didn't know that you had. And you also discover possibilities that you didn't know you had, as opposed to just doing the same thing over and over and over again. So if you fast from something, you can actually increase the flow of magic in your life. But if you do that, you also have to touch the unknown. And the unknown is where it gets sticky because we don't like the unknown. We get scared. Okay. That's not true. Not everyone. Okay. But usually when we don't go after the unknown, it's because we're content or because we're stuck in habitual pattern, or some of us are actually afraid of the unknown. And when we're afraid of the unknown, we're inserting what we think might happen in that unknown. And if you're, open to the unknown, then you're going to be open to magic. But the unknown may not give you exactly what you were looking for. It'll give you what the universe feels was missing. It's not necessarily going to give you what you thought you needed, which is not great for those of us who like control. But many people only want what they want. They don't want surprises. This happens for various reasons that are very personal to the individual. But if you give something up, you are getting surprises. You are also going to get some things that are expected too. So like if you give up coffee, you may get a headache for a few days and feel tired. There are some things that people go through that have done what you've done. And there are some predictable things that happen. Like you get the headache and then after a while, your digestive tract calms down. Maybe that's like the reason that you go off coffee in the first place. Or if you give up bringing your phone to bed, say you're going to give up bringing your phone to bed because you want to get better sleep. Okay. Well, you're likely going to get better sleep, but you might also miss your alarm to get up. Or you might start worrying more that you can't check your emails and you're worried that something is happening. And that could actually have negative effect for you. Not to say that you shouldn't still do it, but there's obviously like another problem there that you have to look at. So the unknown part is you don't know where this happiness is going to lead you. And sometimes that is weirdly scary for people, just the fact that it's an unknown. So do you fear the unknown or do you embrace it? Do you seek it? Why would someone do that? Somebody who's seen magic in it would understand that, oh, I see how this works. But a person who feels confident, right? A person who feels confident and has trust that the universe will deliver something that is for their highest good. But if you're already feeling stressed or anxious or overwhelmed or fearful or pessimistic, then embracing the unknown is a little bit difficult. It's more difficult. And that's why, a lot of these practices that people do for spiritual growth, they are not easy for people who are kind of on the lower levels of the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, like the pyramid, right? So these spiritual practices are actually like self-realization, self-actualization practices. So you have to be in a space of trust and being willing to accept what's going to happen, even though it's in the unknown. Because in the space of not knowing the future is, if your mind is experiencing one of these states of stress, then you might assume that the outcome in that future is going to be worse than what I have right now, or more negative, something bad might happen. But if you get to the point where you feel like anything is better than what's happening right now, like, I guess if you feel like you have no choice, like rock bottom, then things are a little bit different. We become more open to the unknown, despite this kind of really low place that we feel like we're at emotionally. There's a really great Georgia O'Keeffe quote that I love, where she says, "Whether you succeed or not is irrelevant. There is no such thing. Making your unknown known is the important thing, and keeping the unknown always beyond you." Some artists just really get it, making your unknown known is the important thing. And I think creative people really understand this. Any creative endeavor that you go on, where you start and you don't know where you're going, and then it gets a form to it. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, I see it. I see what I was trying to, this happens to me when I write a lot. I don't know what I'm trying to say. I don't know what I'm feeling. And then I'll write and I'm like, oh, that's right. That's exactly what I was feeling. I was having a hard time saying it. And art is a way that people can channel that, whatever your art form is. I wrote my master's thesis on fasting. So I did a lot of this exploration with giving things up. And this was back in like 2015. And all these unexpected things happened for me after I wrote that. Literally the month after I turned my thesis in, I got pregnant, like a month after that, which is weird because I had actually tried to get pregnant when I was like in my early 30s, and all this was happening like right as I was turning 40. So you have to understand that when you start to play with giving things up, you don't know what's going to happen. Even if you want something to happen, you don't know what's going to happen. And you have to have that humility there to be willing to accept whatever happens. And because when we fast, the word for fasting in Sanskrit, which is the language that Ayurvedic medicine has been studied in, and that's my background is in Ayurvedic medicine, the word for fasting is upavasa, and that means to be close to your soul. Another translation of it is to be near to the God, sort of whatever that definition of God is for you. And so being close to your soul. In Ayurveda, we use therapies that are nourishing for certain conditions. And we use therapies that are not nourishing and not pleasant for other conditions. Those that actually can deplete a body, because our goal is to bring back the balance to the mind, body, spirit system. So we're not always doing, I know a lot of people know of Ayurveda as this luscious, I oil my body and it's all about beauty and this like spa experience and stuff like that. And that's a big part of it. But we also need to do some things sometimes that are a little bit uncomfortable, like, even something as small as dry brushing. Dry brushing is a little bit of a rough act for a body, but it gets a whole bunch of things moving, gets your lymphatic system moving. It's, circulation. So an example of how something that is a little bit uncomfortable can produce a positive effect later. So whenever you fast from something, you reduce that thing from your system, from your body, from your mind, you're changing the qualities of you, your body, your mind, and the field that you are in, that this body's traveling in. And this idea of fasting brings up the word sacrifice, which this connotes something specific that you want, that you are giving something up to get this thing. So I'm sacrificing this because I want this other thing. That's one reason that some people may do something like that on a spiritual level. And we probably have some yogis listening in on this, because if you're a yogi, then you know of the yogic virtue of tapas, or the practice of tapas, which is one of the niyamas or virtuous observances that people who practice yoga in a spiritual sense may be practicing this particular virtue. So tapas it has a lot of different literal meanings, like light, heat, pain, suffering. So it's the idea that you're going to accept some pain for your spiritual purification. And there's some more literal definitions to this word having to do with a devotee. When a devotee of some spiritual tradition will expose himself to fires, literally to fires. People do weird things like this. People go on vision quests and do all kinds of weird, painful things to ourselves for different reasons. There's this idea of asceticism, austerity, or going without, accepting some discomfort for your spiritual purification. And it sounds kind of creepy in some ways to think about it. Why do people do this stuff? Why do some people feel the need to forego pleasure or do something that's like a little bit uncomfortable, or sometimes a lot uncomfortable? There are actual real biological benefits when a body has certain health conditions to invoke the right therapy, to deplete a body, or to rough it up a little bit with dry brushing to get the lymphatic system to move, for example. So there are real biological benefits. Like if you have a tumor, you want that thing gone. So you can either, use your body's regeneration process to do that through fasting and medicines and things like that, or they can go in and they could cut that out of you, or they can blast it out of you with radiation. But those are not pleasurable things to go through, right? There are some mental benefits to these kinds of practices as well. So like training yourself to tolerate and to cope. And then when your mind changes, that also has a physical impact, because when you go through something painful, you also get these like delicious chemical cocktails that get released along with the pain that bring this like weird sense of pleasure into the mix. You think of endorphins when you take a cold shower, right? So you get all this rush of endorphins after you take a cold shower. Or if you're running a long distance, then you might get this rush of endorphins. Or if you've ever, for those of you who are into fasting already and you've learned about ketones and things like that, when the body breaks down fat, you get ketones circulating through your system. And ketones have actually been shown to enhance your mental clarity and focus in some individuals. So going without can sometimes bring positive effects when it's done in the right context. That's the key, when it's done in the right context. Spiritually, when you are practicing tapas and you're willfully accepting a little bit of pain or suffering for your spiritual purification, this proves your determination in the matter, doesn't it? Because if you feel pain, most of our inclination is to back away when you feel pain. But if you are stubborn and I'm going to stick with this pain, that really obviously shows you really, really, really want something. I hope you don't damage your body in the process, because some of the spiritual practices can do that to you. It's not like all the spiritual practices are beneficial for your body. I can tell you many stories of many of my clients doing too much breath work or too much pranayama and things like that. And they're actually not realizing they're giving themselves anxiety and digestive issues and sleep issues and things like that from doing something they thought was healthy because it was like a yoga thing, right? So everything has to be done in the right context, including fasting, okay? If you've ever heard of a hunger strike, I'm not saying you should do one, by the way, but I think it's a really interesting thing that people do. People will actually fast as an act of protest or to raise awareness. So Cesar Chavez did that, Gandhi. People do this in prison. they will raise awareness about a change that needs to be made, or they're protesting something. It invokes a lot of attention and sympathy and action. It is really difficult to see someone not eating. It's difficult to see someone starving. It's difficult to feel it. And it's also difficult to see someone do that. And so this happens, people will use hunger as a means of creating change. So fascinating. But sometimes hunger is not our choice, and going without sometimes is not our choice. And so I want to have us all recognize that if you have time right now to listen to me here talking today, you have the luxury of time and space and resources to be able to dedicate your attention to your well-being and your self-care, or whatever reason you showed up here today. You have time to dedicate to that. And that is amazing. Not everyone has that opportunity. So take a moment to accept that fact, even if you've been telling yourself that your life is crap, or you don't have enough money or time, or all the things that we feel like we don't have enough of. Just take this moment right now to accept this fact. So I believe there's a reason you're here. There's a reason that we found each other. And I'm inviting you to explore this more deeply now. Your mind and your body are interconnected. You have a thought. It produces a feeling. Sometimes thoughts are big enough to produce physiological responses in your body. And then there can be really super big feelings with that, right? You've felt them in your body. You have felt butterflies in your stomach from a thought, right? Like imagining being somewhere with someone. You have felt things like a lump in the throat when you experience grief in some form, or sadness that you're holding in, that you want to cry and you don't let it out. So the mind and the body are interconnected. They are. And so when you are feeling something physically, there's often a mental component. And when you're feeling something, when you're noticing a mental pattern, there is often a physical implication. One of my teachers used to draw a dot in the middle of a blank piece of paper, and then he would draw a big circle around that dot. The circle represented the paradigm that you are used to, and you being that dot in the middle. So you've got this border and this boundary around you, and that's your paradigm. And when you go beyond that circle, that's where the unknown is. And people have all sorts of reactions to going beyond that circle, or imagining what's beyond that circle. The farther they go beyond that circle, the more change that is going to take place. The more change that takes place, the more adjustment that needs to happen. But the more space that's created as you go from that center of that circle outside of the circle, the more space that's been created, the more space element that has been brought into your mix here, the more your mind can also fill in the details with what it thinks is going to happen. When you increase that space element, that's kind of how visioning works. When you think out to a point in space and time that's in the future, that's far from where you are now, you're increasing the space, and all the little thoughts of what you think might happen or what you want to happen can come in, fill that in. So you have to be able to identify, to successfully give something up, you have to be able to identify when you are stuck inside the circle. Are you stuck inside the circle, or are you venturing beyond it? So if you're taking things like small risks in your life, or in your life or in your daily routines and your diet and things like that, then you're venturing outside the circle, small risks. If you're taking big risks, you're venturing outside the circle. But if you want everything the same, then you are staying inside the circle. You get the same results inside the circle. If you go too far from the center, you might have a reaction, a stress response, something like that, that might make you want to bounce back toward the center of the circle to kind of like comfort yourself, or like, let me latch onto this rock. That gust of wind was too big. I got to go back to safety. Okay. So why don't we actually actively give things up? Why don't we do this regularly? We have things like attachment to comfort, to pleasure. We are attached to the known. We might be attached to our circle, our place in the circle. We be very comfortable, even being content there, which these are all things that have positive connotations. So I'm not saying that you have to venture outside the circle, okay? You have to know when is the right time to give something up. So people will sign up for a challenge for change of behavior in 21 days or something like that, because there's some research that shows that that's the amount of time it takes to change your behavior. And some people will change their behavior during that time. They will have success, and others won't, because some people take longer to change and some people take a shorter time. But no one will do it if they don't want to, unless they're forced to, okay? So the fact that you can even think about, should I give something up, means there's something a little different about you, that you're entertaining some of your own power. This is kind of a hilarious story. I was not allowed to bring meat into my yoga teacher training in Costa Rica 13 years ago. So I went away to do this yoga teacher training, and I was like a big meat eater. I probably ate it with like 2 out of 3 meals a day, maybe 3 meals sometimes. It was like insane. I ate a lot of meat. And so I go to this vegetarian yoga retreat to learn how to teach yoga, and I smuggle in beef jerky. I'm like, these people are not going to tell me that I can't eat meat, whatever. So I was going to figure out a way to do it anyway, even though they were telling me that I couldn't. But then this really weird thing happened. After a couple of days, I was like, I didn't want to eat that beef jerky. I started to feel really good. And then I was like, oh, I don't actually want that beef jerky. And then the idea of it grossed me out. And then when I got home, I tried some chicken and it grossed me out. It made me want to throw up, actually. And so in that example, I actually tried out another way and it felt better. And then I wanted to continue doing it. So sometimes we are forced into doing something through an environmental pressure, and then end up discovering that it's actually really good for us, that we like it, that, we're noticing some positive effects from us. And sometimes we do things that are harmful to ourselves because it's what we're used to doing with people that we love. Think about your family recipes, the way you celebrate your holidays, the way you have, Sunday night dinners at your mom's house, or whatever those family traditions are, that where they may be serving foods that were appropriate at a certain time of their life, that they just, kept as traditions, but when they were like more physically active or something, and haven't made adjustments to like what is actually here now with us, what bodies are here, what do people really need. So these kind of collective rituals that we have with family, with friends and things like that could be like, I go out drinking with my friends because that's what we do. And that's when we do these things with people that we love, even if they're harmful to us, sometimes we do them because we really, really want to be with those people that we love. And so when we want to, this love that we want, this relationship is very important to us. And in these examples, we're actually allowing the love that we want, or the relationship that we want, we allow it to break this unwritten contract that we have with ourselves, which is to take the very best care of ourselves, because we are the only ones who can do that. When we're adults, when we're kids, somebody else takes care of us. And the older we get, the more independent we become, the more we have to understand how our own body works. It's our job. It's our job. And it's really sad that sometimes these collective behaviors with friends or family can affect, or a community that you live in can affect your ability to take care of yourself, because something is being encouraged is actually not good for you, your body. And so this is where you kind of have to be a little bit of a rebel when you're working on your own health. And I always tell my clients that, like, sometimes you kind of have to feel crazy, because if you look at the health statistics, there are a lot of people who are very unhealthy around you. You go to work, you go to your family, your friends, lots of people are struggling with their health these days. So you kind of have to be a little bit of a weirdo or a rebel if you want to be the healthy light here. You have to. I believe so. And then you can help other people by being an example. I'm not saying you're not going to catch flack for it. You will, but you know what? You're going to feel better. So what is the single most important thing that you need to know, though? Talked about a lot of things today. And what is the single most important thing that you need to know about giving things up? So first, we have to start with there being two ways that you can give something up. The first way is that you decide to give something up. Okay. And the second way is that sometimes you will be forced to give something up by the universe through some environmental pressure. You could call it a divine intervention, if you will, if it's something that you feel like you knew you needed to do anyway, or that ended up being beneficial for you. Though if the universe intervenes and, takes that thing away from you and you really, wanted it, you're not going to feel that way. I get that. But you have to know that there's two ways. One is you decide, and the other is it's an external pressure where it's brought on you. But the single most important thing is that you have to want to give something up, like really want to. You either want something else, you might want something else, and you're giving something up as a sacrifice, or you really want just to stop that thing because you want to feel better or because you know it's not good for you. But in all these cases, you are deciding that you are giving it up, or you're being forced to. I don't even know that they're that different because there's a clarity to it. There's a real want there. There's almost like there's no other choice. There's no other choice for you, so you can use it as a means to an end, or you can literally do it just for the sake of giving that thing up. Either way, you want to. There's a real want there, a real clear desire to do something. There's no analyzing, there's no ruminating. It's not just this thing that's happening in your head. It's something more than that. It's visceral. You're not just doing it because it's the thing to do, right? The thing to do because you heard it was healthy from a friend or something like that. Wanting does not exist in your head, even though you have thoughts. Okay, real wanting does not exist in your head. The head may be involved, but real decisions are made in your bones. They're made in your gut. They're made in your heart. And as long as you feel like you have a choice, you won't make the change. In order for the decision to come, you must feel like the answer of what to do is so clear. It is the only choice you must do. And this is why giving things up is in large part a spiritual endeavor, though it affects, obviously, your mind and your body. You are seeking and you are operating in service of higher guidance when you are giving something up. That's how it works. Giving things up is a spiritual game. It's a spiritual game that has a bit of magic and wonder and surrender and unknown to it. Spirituality, in my definition, is the opposite of materiality. Materiality has form and structure and is known and can be seen. Spirituality is less physical and tangible, but is more ever present. It's what's underlying everything, and it's mysterious until it becomes material. And then it is seen, and then it is known. That's how creation works. So if you want a little bit of the universe's magic, you want to let more of that in, then give something up. Be very strategic about it, but don't expect to be able to control the outcome. That's the joy in it, after all, to know that we are all held by something that is bigger than ourselves, that doesn't have a name, though we try to give it one. If you are embarking on a fertility journey and are ready to have your mind blown about what your body is really capable of and how it's impacted by the environment, then check out my book, The Ayurvedic Guide to Fertility. You can actually download the introduction to the book for free on my website at heathergrzych.com. That's Heather, Grzych.com. Read the intro for free and then buy the rest of this fertility enlightening book pretty much anywhere books are sold. I want to thank you for listening to this show. It brings me great pleasure to provide this content to you. I also want to let you know that I'll be making some very amazing announcements soon. And if you're not already on my email list, then I encourage you to go over to my website and subscribe to my email list so that I can keep you informed about these announcements that are going to be coming up very soon. So my website is heathergrzych.com. That's Heather, GRZYCH.com. And I look forward to getting these important announcements to you very soon and connecting. Thank you for tuning in and dropping in with us today. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. I really want to hear your feedback. To learn more about my work, visit heathergrzych.com. That's Heather, GRZYCH.com. And meet me here next time on The Wisdom of the Body.